She's a multi-craft enthusiast, but of them all we believe Willow loves to weave.
Well, hello, fellow weaver. This is Willow Goose, and today we're going to talk about block substitution in WeavePoint. Now, why would we ever want to do block substitution? Basically, instead of our old method of using a lot of repeats and a lot of copy and paste of similar groupings of threading, we can use block substitution to create the draft a whole lot quicker than that. Let me show you with this tiny little sample, primarily so that you can see on one page what we're doing. What we're going to do is we're going to color some of the quote blocks that we see here. Okay, so one block would be this repeat of 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, which is the tabby. Now, theoretically, we could highlight all of it if the tabby repeat was 8 ends long, but for illustration purposes, we're just going to do the one unique repeat, which is 1, 2. Then we have another block over here, okay, which is 1, 3, 2. Okay, and you can see that this block will also repeat again and repeat again over here. Now for our third block, let's see, we'll get another color, and you will see here we have a third block. So this block repeats here, this block repeats here, again this one will repeat here and here, and then we go back to this block, which is our 1, 2, 1, 2 repeat. Okay, this kind of illustrates on the full draft what the blocks would look like. So once you've identified the blocks, then you want to create the profile draft, which is basically illustrating that we have 4 of block 1, we have 2 of block 2, 2 of block 3, 2 of block 2 again, this one which we call block 2, and then we have another 4 repeats of block 1. So now that we've identified our blocks, let's create a profile draft which indicates where we want each of these blocks to be. So what we'll do is we'll create a new file. Now let me bring up a screen print of what we had in our last shot with the different blocks identified. We're going to do this on the shaft that corresponds to the block number, and that's just a software thing. So if I want to indicate that this is block 1, then what we'll do is come over here and we'll do block 1. And you see that we need block 1 4 times. Then we're going to need a block 2. And then we're going to need 2 block 3s. We repeated our block 2. And then remember we have 4 block 1s. Each of these numbers represents one of the patterns that we identified in the previous step. This is what we're going to call our profile draft. In order to get the final result that we're looking for, which is really that these representations of each block are expanded into the actual block, then what we're going to need to do is create another file that has all of our blocks in it. And we've actually done that. Let me show you what we have. Through the magic of video, we've already created our block definitions. How the software recognizes this is by the colors. This is the reason why in our previous step we had colored them in this way. If you look at the screenshot, you'll see that we created one pattern of each unique block. The 1, 2 tabby, block A, and block B. You'll recognize that from our original final result that we wanted. let's go back to the profile draft, substitute these patterns into each of those places, and see how the block substitution works. So let's open up our profile draft. And remember, each of these ones is actually going to become the tabby 1, 2, 1, 2, and so forth. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do the transform block substitution. Then we're going to pick up our test blocks, which is the file that we were just looking at with one copy of each individual pattern. Placement absolute, because we want to start at the very beginning versus somewhere in the middle here. Let's preview this beforehand just to make sure it's working properly. And now you can see that we've got our 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, block A and block B, just like we wanted it. So we're going to say OK so that we can make sure to save this result. And that's all you have to do. Obviously, this is a very small sample. You'd want to do it on towel size or a project size sample. But you can see how you could have multiple patterns or multiple blocks entered into one file. You do that once, and then you create the profile draft and let that substitute in. Now, what if you have like an end that doesn't follow the pattern? In some cases, like where you have the block, but at the last one you have to have an additional end. Maybe you create a different block for that. Or you could go through and try to manually insert those additional ends. Frankly, having done this, we probably would create an additional block for it, because part of the issue that I think block substitution solves is the problem of trying to scroll through horizontally, trying to figure out where you are, because the scrolling is very difficult to get precise, and so you may only want to scroll 3 or 4 ends, and you're scrolling like 20 ends, and you start losing track of where you are. By making sure the profile draft is correct, which is going to be a much smaller number of entries here, defining each of the blocks, even some of these irregular blocks, even if you had to create one where maybe a block is unique or maybe it's only used once or twice, that's okay. You're going to have to create it. Even if you did it by hand, you have to create it. So you're not really wasting time, but when you've got lots of repeats, the block substitution will save so much time, and we're really glad that we took the time today to learn how to do it. As we think about it, maybe we ought to spend a little bit more time looking into each of these functions and figuring out how we can save time. We were a little concerned about taking the time to learn this because, well, maybe we could do it manually faster because we're familiar with it. But sometimes it's nice to learn something new. We hope that you learned something new today and that you give it a try, because we think that this is a really useful function that will save you a lot of time and increase your accuracy. Hope you have a happy weaving day. Bye! Hello! Willow from the future here, and we've been playing around with this block substitution tool since we filmed the last part of the video, and we were thinking, we wonder if we could do the block substitution on the treadling also, and it turns out the answer is yes, we can. So the best way to do this is to create one file. You cannot do a file for the threading and a file for the treadling. You have to do one file. You define your blocks. So we have 3 blocks up here. We have too many to count on the left side. And then what we did was we printed it out and labeled each of these blocks so that when we were going through the draft, we would know which block was which when we went to do the profile. Now, let's go back and look at the profile for this one. In the profile, we have both the threading and the treadling defined. And we don't think it really matters what you have in the tie-up. You'll deal with the tie-up later. You can see that we've got all of that defined for each of our towels. And then when you do the block substitution, then it'll substitute both in the threading and the treadling. Isn't that cool? One trick we learned was you want to create a file of the blocks only, a file of the profile only, then make a copy of the profile file as what's going to be your full draft. Now in this third file, what you want to do is you do your block substitution. If something goes terribly wrong, or if you later find out there's an error, the fastest way to correct this is to either correct the blocks file or correct the profile file, whichever one was incorrect, and regenerate the block substitution. If it's something small, you might be able to do it manually, but many times these errors may multiply across many different blocks, and in that case, it would be much easier to take the profile, take the blocks, fix whatever needs to be fixed, and then create a new file and do the block substitution and do it that way. So that's why we keep both the profile and the blocks, then create a third file, which will be the block substituted version of that. So we hope that you try this because it's much easier to manage, and we don't have as much scrolling around, and it's much faster than doing each end manually or repeat or cut and paste. All those methods, trust me, we're pros at. But we did not know about the block substitution. Now that we do, we're going to be substituting everywhere we can. So hope you give this a try. Have a happy weaving day. Bye.